Why are you still stuck in the middle of everything in your construction business, maybe overwhelmed, under profitable, even though you're working harder than ever and using the best tools? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Maybe you've got the software, you've got the projects, you've got the leads, you may even have a pretty good team, but somehow you're still the bottleneck. You're still getting pulled into too many decisions. You're still wondering where all the profit went. You're still wondering, why am I working too many nights and weekends? And even with better tools in place, it can still feel like the business depends way too much on you. Sound familiar? So what's really going on? Is the problem that you need different leads? Do you need a different team? Do you need different software? Do you need more hours in the day, a better bookkeeper, or stronger team? Or is there something deeper happening underneath the surface? You're listening to the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com, where it's all about systematizing your construction business to maximize freedom, impact, and wealth. My name is Todd DeWalt, and my team and I have helped hundreds of construction business owners over the past 10 years put systems in place in their business so they can eliminate chaos, grow their profits, build stronger teams, and get their lives back. And in this episode, I'm talking with Eric Fortenberry, founder and CEO of JobTread, one of the top-rated project management software platforms for builders, remodelers, and contractors. And Eric has a very unique vantage point because not only has he turned around a construction business, but he created a software platform, and he has now worked with thousands of construction business owners who are trying to grow, trying to scale, trying to get more profitable, and trying to get out of the day-to-day chaos. And in this conversation, he points to some of the real reasons that contractors stay stuck. We're going to talk about one thing that is quietly keeping you under profitable, a singular activity you may think is optional, but it isn't. And if you think that software will fix your business, we'll talk about what you could be missing. We also get into delegation, SOPs, team ownership, and what may be keeping you stuck as the person every decision has to run through. We also talk about radical transparency. Be sure to stick around to hear Eric talk about radical transparency. And then also we get into AI. Eric's a huge believer in it, but he also shares a warning that every construction business owner needs to hear before handing too much responsibility over to AI. Because AI can make you faster, but it cannot replace your judgment, your expertise, or your responsibility as the owner. So if you're wondering, why am I still overwhelmed? Why am I under profitable? Why am I still stuck in the middle of everything? Even though you're working harder and investing in better tools, this conversation with Eric Fortenberry is going to help you see what may really be going on. Quick question before we get to that conversation. Are you carrying your project risk too long? Maybe hoping subs will show up and materials will arrive on time and hoping things will work out. Don't do that. My free playbook, How to Buy Out a Project Playbook, shows you how to take control of costs and eliminate chaos up front in the buyout phase. If you're a residential builder, remodeler, trade contractor, you may not be familiar with the buyout process. It is standard in the commercial general contracting world, and it's the key to assigning risk and locking in profits. And you can get your hands on my free buyout playbook, How to Buy Out a Project Playbook. Go to the link in the show notes, or you can go to constructionleadingedge.com/buyout, BUYOUT. Now, let's get into today's episode. Our guest today is Eric Fortenberry, founder and CEO of JobTread, which has quickly become the top-rated project management software for thousands of builders and contractors, over 12,000 to be exact, and quite a few of our clients and audience members are users of JobTread. And Eric was also just recently named the EY Entrepreneur of the Year 2026 Southwest winner. Eric, congratulations, and thanks for being on here, man. How's it going?
Yeah, appreciate it. It's going great.
Right now, a lot of the people I talk to, a lot of the construction business owners I talk to are busier than ever, working more hours than ever, but they're not happy with the profitability, or they're not happy with the amount of time that they're working, the lack of freedom. Many of them tell me they just feel like they're running on a hamster wheel, running faster and faster, not getting anywhere off. So to kick things off, I'd like to start with this. You have the unique vantage point of having worked with literally tens of thousands of construction business owners. They're using your platform. You've talked to lots of them in the Facebook group where you're very active, JobTread Connects, which are incredible, by the way. So here's my question. What is the single biggest operational lie that contractors are being told today that's secretly keeping them stuck? In other words, what's a big mistake, one big mistake that you see builders and contractors making that is keeping them stuck on that hamster wheel?
If I had to boil it down to one thing, I would probably say that they're just not charging enough. They don't know their numbers. They don't truly understand, their financials, right? There's a difference between their gross profit and their net profit. Often I see that people just don't really understand, what it takes to deliver the job that they're selling. And often that will lead them to, just inaccurately price it, and often on the lower side where they should be charging more. And I think the root of this issue is that, again, that they don't take the time to just really understand their numbers and doing the job costing. It's often something that people say that, I don't have the time for it, or, I don't have the tools for it, or I know what my numbers are. I know how much I need to make. They just have this mindset that they don't need to be taking the time to do the job costing. And I would argue that they actually do, and they need to be doing that more than just about anything else, because, so often people continue to do the same things over and over, and we're creatures of habit, right? And so they may not even realize that they're underestimating, how long it takes to do, a particular trade or labor, or maybe they've got, outdated material pricing. And the notion of when you do your job costing, when you record all of your expenses to each of your jobs and say, hey, is that what we expected to pay? Is that what we had budgeted for? And if so, great, awesome, everything's good to go. But, it's about catching those times where you didn't budget for it correctly, and maybe your production rate was off. Maybe you've got a different crew and they're no longer able to do something as fast as the other crew. Maybe again you're using outdated pricing. I mean, some prices are all over the map these days, and really since COVID. And so I think that the notion of taking the time and really using the tools that they have. I mean, JobTread is specifically, designed to help them manage their jobs. And that includes that job costing in real time so that they can course correct. So many times though, contractors, they just kind of don't do the job costing. They just sort of assume it'll all shake out in the wash. They assume their bookkeeper will take care of it all. And I think that's where these disconnects happen. And when people continue to do the same thing over and over, and they just don't see that they're not making the money that they should, and that they're not covering their overhead, that's what leads them to continue, making the same mistakes, and they struggle to grow their business, and they don't understand the why. I would chalk it up to not knowing your numbers and not doing your job costing would probably be the biggest challenge that I see contractors making.
You mentioned a few things. Number one, not understanding your overhead. And if you, like many builders, started off as a one man or one woman show, and their overhead cost was just them. They didn't have an office. They didn't have a team. And then as you grow, you take on more overhead. And if you don't understand what your overhead costs are, then you're starting off on the wrong foot. You're pricing your work to not be profitable.
I often see these business owners who, again, they're used to doing everything. As entrepreneurs, we naturally just keep putting on all the hats. I see a lot of people though that struggle to delegate and to build out a team that can take that burden off of you. At the end of the day, we are only just one person, and there's only so much that one person can do. I feel like I see a lot of those kind of solo owner operators. They get to the point where they get overwhelmed, and all they think to do is just work harder and do more. I'm a big believer in hard work, and it's very important. But at the end of the day, if we want to scale our business, we have to also scale our team, and we have to learn, to delegate the responsibilities to those people that we have put in place. I think that's also very, very important because if you want to get off that hamster wheel and you want to do something different, then I would encourage you to again, understand your numbers, model out your growth and your finances, make sure that you hire at the right time when you can afford it. So you're not putting yourself in a cash flow bind. But you do need to build out a team, and you need to think about how can I put people who are better than me in each of the roles so that I can then be able to take that step back and focus on the business instead of having to do every single thing every day.
Yeah, that's really good advice. When it comes to the financials, most people in construction did not start a business to be a bookkeeper. However, I've worked with really large companies. Back before I started my own business, I managed projects that were run by GCs doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year. These were large national GCs that were managing 20, 30, $50 million projects. And I got to see behind the screen. And there was an architect that I worked with who accused, in kind of a joking way, one of these GCs of being an accounting firm masquerading as a contractor. And he was sort of taking a shot at them. But the truth is, what I've found is construction companies that scale are actually really good at other things than construction. They're really good at accounting. And for custom builders and GCs, in my experience, they're really good at pre-construction. And you just can't see those things. They don't talk about them on their website, but that's what makes them really good. It's not just what they're doing out in the field. And here's the good news. If you're listening to this thinking, we're 5 minutes into this conversation and I already hate it because Eric and Todd are telling me I've got to learn how to do bookkeeping. No, don't try to do something you hate and you suck at. Find the right person, design your business in a way that you can pay somebody else to do these things that you're never going to be good at. Don't try to focus on your weaknesses. Find a who instead of figuring out how to get better at these things that you're never going to be good at. The other thing I would say is for a lot of people that you talk to, it sounds like they want to scale their business. Same thing with people that we talk to. And you have two options. If you're not happy with the results that your business is giving you, you can either work harder, just use brute force, work more hours, learn how to do bookkeeping, just do it all yourself. Just be Atlas with the weight of the world on your shoulders, just piling more and more on. Or redesign your business in a way that distributes that load. You don't have to do it all. If you look at other businesses that scale, the owner isn't doing it all. That's a big transition that people need to make. You don't have to DIY it. You don't have to do it all yourself. There's help out there. And it starts with having a vision and a design for your business to get there. So I hope that pulled some people out of the pit of despair thinking they have to get good at bookkeeping. What is one undervalued skill that you would advise all construction business owners to develop so they can be successful?
I think I would probably continue on with the thought process of, delegation, but I would take it a step further to, learn to be really good at defining your processes and understanding how to, look at a process and determine, is that an efficient process? Is that a good use of that person's time? And are they able to effectively accomplish the task at hand? And I think when you can get good at understanding your processes and really defining them, then I would say it's important to be able to then create SOPs. So your standard, operating processes. How are you going to, operate this business for every single role? Your training documentation, your onboarding documentation. Get good at, defining what do you expect from your people and how should they be operating so that you can have a well-oiled machine and everybody knows what they need to do in every situation. And if they don't, then they need to know how to go find that answer. And when you as a business owner who, again, you should understand all of the processes here and you should be providing, that insight, then I find that that's how you're going to help people get up to speed the quickest, and then also be as efficient and effective as they can in their role, because they know what their responsibilities are, what the expectations are, and how to do it.
You said delegation is important, and in order to delegate, you need to be able to clarify expectations and what people should do. How do you practically do that? Can you talk about maybe behind the scenes, how do you practically teach delegation at JobTread? And how do you delegate not necessarily a recurring task, but maybe there's a new initiative? Can you talk us through practically how you do that?
First and foremost, but before you delegate, I mean, like, you have to, again, define what is it that you want to be done and what is the expected outcome. So when I first took over the construction business that I ran in 2018, where I built out the first version of JobTread, the first thing I did was I went in and I met with each person on the team, and I would basically spend either half or a whole day just shadowing them and understanding their processes, understanding how they operate, what tools do they have at their disposal, how are they, going about their day to day, and then I think once you understand that, if you want to introduce something new, then again, how does that fit into that current SOP or that, kind of line of thinking and operating, so that you can make sure that you're giving them very clear instructions. I think a lot of times, though, you have to make sure that you have the right people in the right roles. And so it's very important that you understand, is this a good task for the person that I'm assigning it to? Some people just are not going to be the right person for every single task. And so, like, understanding your people and understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, what they're good at doing, and what kind of framework they're operating with, like, that's when you can sort of figure out, well, who is the best person for me to delegate this task to? I'm sure we'll all say, well, I can do it best, but at the end of the day, like, you can't. Like, you need to have the ability to delegate out the responsibilities to others. So I would say it's important that you understand your others and understand their strengths and weaknesses, and who has, the capacity to take this on. Because again, like, you can't just pile everything on somebody else either, or they're going to have that same problem that you had, feeling overwhelmed and bottlenecked, and everything's having to go through them. So it's really about understanding your team and each of the people on it. And then you can figure out how to effectively delegate and give those very clear expectations and instructions.
That's great advice. Understand your people. Get really clear on the expected outcome. This is really important. I believe a lot of people go straight to the task, and maybe they don't even know what the outcome is. This is a big delegation mistake, is jumping straight to a task, not being clear on the desired outcome, not setting up parameters, guardrails, and then there are a lot of visionary types out there in the construction world who are just throwing tasks at their people, and they've forgotten about things that they told them a week ago, and that gets really confusing. One thing that I've found that works really well for me is I found that if you want to delegate a task, a project, an initiative, you have to spend significantly more time delegating it than you would spend doing it yourself. And this is where I think a lot of people, they just throw up their hands and say, well, it's easier if I just do it myself. Well, yeah, one time. But if you're going to do this 100 times a year. So what I found is, completely agree with what you say. Start with, what is the desired outcome? What is the desired end state? When this is done, we will have accomplished these things. And then I spend a lot of time, I use AI for this quite a bit, walking through, this is everything that needs to be done. What are the questions this person will have? What are the parameters? What are the guardrails? I create a set of performance specifications for a project or an initiative and spend quite a bit of time and hand that off. And if you do a good job, I found, you don't get a lot of questions. If you don't do a good job and you just throw tasks at people and you're not clear on the desired outcome, then you just set yourself up for a lot of questions. And in that case, you might as well just do it yourself.
There can also be another way to approach it. And I think for larger, tasks, like the other way to approach it, instead of kind of coming in and saying, hey, here's exactly what I want, here are the exact instructions. Because again, some people, that's exactly what they want. Now, there's going to be other people who, if they have that kind of bigger picture thinking, they really like to run with ideas, take ownership over them. Your other approach could be to try to involve them, as early as you can, where to some extent you can kind of, you may know where you want to go with this, but like if they can feel like it was their idea and they came up with the solution, that process right there, that will help them to take ownership over it. And they've created their own buy-in, and now they are invested in that idea because they feel like that was their idea. And so they're going to be even more excited and passionate about going and executing that. Again, it's important to know your people and understand where can you sort of just maybe tee up the conversation and steer the group a little bit through the conversation, but allow, those people who you ultimately want to do the work to take ownership over it, because that will make a big difference.
This is a lesson I wish I'd learned 15 years earlier in my career, because I was guilty of going into my office in the job trailer or wherever I was stuck at the time, hammering out a process, making the plan, and then going to the team and attempting to cram it down their throats, and then being frustrated. This is a perfect plan. Why are these guys? It's like they're finding every reason it won't work. And it's because I was delegating at the wrong level. And what I've found is exactly what you're saying. The half-baked plan that your team comes up with and that they will follow is better than the perfect plan that you can come up with that they'll find every reason it won't work. So that's a leadership unlock right there. I'm really glad you brought that up. Get the people involved, lead the conversation, help them figure out why they want to change, what they want to change, how they should do things. I've done a lot of deep dives with teams on site, getting them to change their process. That's the only way it works, is helping the team figure out why they want to change. What should you do? And then facilitating that conversation. Yep, that's good stuff there. There is a fantastic JobTread Facebook group, and I crowdsourced some questions. I went on there a few days ago, said, hey, if you could ask Eric Fortenberry one question, what would you ask him? And I've got a couple of those coming up here in just a minute. One of the hot topics is AI. AI is everywhere. And AI, Claude, Claw, automations, agents, they're just dominating the conversation right now. You've talked about the benefits of AI, but you've also talked about that there are some real, maybe hidden risks under the surface of all of this AI hype. So I'm curious, what are some of the dangers of a construction business owner just blindly jumping in and using AI in their business?
I'm a huge AI evangelist, big fan. I think, Claude's one of my best friends now. It's very important that we all leverage AI. It has so many benefits to your business. And honest to God, I feel like it has made me a superhuman because of how quickly I can solve problems or come up with ideas or figure things out, like analyze massive data sets that like could have taken me, days or weeks or who knows how long, to do. So I do think it is a huge advantage and a big tool that everybody needs to be leveraging, but I say all that with the caveat of that, it is important that we understand the risk as well. At the end of the day, my biggest concern this whole time has been that I see the tendency to just see AI as this easy button. And you can just go press that easy button and bam, you got some sort of, whatever it may be that you asked it to do. You got something, beautifully written or some great set of instructions or, fully analyzed set of plans or a budget built or schedule built. And again, I think that's great at how quickly it can generate, and draft up this information for us. But I think it's very important that, we don't forget that we are still the experts. We are still in charge. The buck stops with us. My biggest fear is as we continue to roll out AI features, and again, I'm seeing, tons and tons of excitement and usage. I just want everyone to remember though, at the end of the day, you have to double check and triple check everything that AI puts out there. I would say, back in the day, it used to be, trust and verify. I would say don't trust and verify. It's going to be that time. And again, the challenge is AI will convince you without a shadow of a doubt that it is dead right. 100% this is the answer. And you can be like, hey, actually 2 + 2 does not equal 5. And then it's like, oh, you're right. It equals 4. And it's like, yeah, like, how did you even miss that? But like there is this notion, and every AI actually tracks it. They have a hallucination rate. There is this, tendency for it to, hallucinate. And it's giving you what it thinks you want to hear and what you're looking for. And if it doesn't know the answer, it's going to do its best guess to just brute force, figure it out and tell you that's the right answer. And that's where I think contractors, we really have to make sure that we are double checking that, because my biggest concern and fear is that someone's going to go and sell a fixed price project. And then, they're going to get into it. Push come to shove, they're going to realize that, the AI forgot something, and that something could have been something big. And again, at the end of the day, like, you sold a fixed price contract, and obviously you'll go back and you'll try to get a change order. You'll try to explain the situation. But at the end of the day, like, you have entered into a contractual, agreement here. And if this were to go to court, like, the judge is not going to care who omitted this. It doesn't matter. You're not going to go after Claude. You are the operator. You are the one responsible. I want people to keep that in mind, because, like, again, like, it can create a whole lot of content and a whole lot of solutions and answers very, very quickly. But, like, you are the expert. You are the one that has the real relationship with your clients. And the AI is only going to use what you give it. I think this tendency to just, use AI to respond to everything, to draft up everything, to create all these answers like that can, get out of hand if we don't remember that this is just a tool to supplement and complement all of our efforts, but, like, we are still in charge. And I really hope to see that people will remember that. I don't see AI just, like, replacing contractors, at least not in the near future, and hopefully not for a long time, because, like, it's the people and it's the relationships. It's that knowledge that you have working with that client. It's being able to read their body language and understand what really matters to them. The AI is not going to get, and it's not going to understand. And so hopefully we can remember to continue building the relationships, continue answering the phone, continue working with our clients, and don't just take this AI for granted and think it's that easy button, because I'm very worried that, a lot of people are gonna get themselves into hot water when they do that.
Quick break for something that might hit close to home. If you are a custom home builder, remodeler, or a commercial GC, and your business basically lives in your head, this is for you. I was on a business evaluation call recently with a builder doing multi-million-dollar custom homes and big renovations. On paper, from the outside, everything looks great. But in reality, he was working 60 to 70 hours a week. And when we looked at it, he admitted that he was spending about 75% of his time in reactive mode, putting out fires on low rent activities. When we talked about his handoff from the office to the field, he graded it at like a C- or a D+. You see, they were starting jobs before the scope was nailed down, subs weren't clearly lined up, material selections were half-baked, and there was a lot of we'll figure it out as we go. Classic just enough to start trap stuff. And that led to costly mistakes, delays, and there were a couple of near disasters on high-profile projects that he absolutely could not afford to screw up. And then when we went through the evaluation, we found hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in hidden profit between the rework, giveaways, lost productivity, schedule delays, and then the opportunity cost. And the common thread was a weak pre-construction and handoff process. There was a pre-construction deficiency. And that call is what I would like to invite you to today. It's a free, about 45-minute business evaluation call with my team. We'll walk through a simple diagnostic to grade your office to field handoff. We'll quantify the hidden profit that may be in your business, and then we'll map out what a real operating system for your business would look like so it can run without everything going through you. Then if it looks like we can help, we'll schedule a second call to go through the implementation program that fits your specific situation. If it's not a fit, you'll still walk away with clarity and a concrete plan. But here's the deal. This is not for everybody. It's for companies doing over $1 million a year in revenue. And we only have capacity to take on a handful of clients each month. So if you want your business to look real different 12 months from now, Now is the time to take action. To book your business evaluation call, you can click the link in the show notes or simply go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, APPLY, and book your business evaluation call. When I was in college studying structural engineering years ago, computer-aided design was just coming out. And there was a risk that somebody could just put in a few parameters and it would spit out a structural design for a building. And it would do it. And it wouldn't tell you if it was right or wrong. And it was crucial that engineers still understood the fundamentals and that they used the tool to design components and check everything and not design the entire building. And I agree with you. There's a risk. I've seen this. It's like, guys, just because AI can do it efficiently, just because AI, there's a tool out there that you can upload PDFs of plans and it will kick out specifications, detailed estimate, and a schedule. Just because it can doesn't mean you should trust it. I share your concern. I think there will be people, there probably are people right now who are feeling the effects of, well, I just went all in on AI and I only found out the hard way.
I've seen a lot of people who have invested a lot of time because, again, it's fun, it's exciting, it's something new. It has this mind-blowing, experience that happens rather often, but like I've seen a lot of people who will also come back and tell you, man, like I went down this rabbit hole and I wasted an entire day doing something that like I should have just kept doing it the old way because like it's actually a lot faster. Not everything is actually faster or more accurate when you're using AI. And so like it is this fine balance of like, let's make sure that we're being productive, we're being, very focused on what we're trying to do with it, and that we're not taking our eye off the ball. Sometimes it feels like playing a video game, or we like to feel like we can all be developers. And I see a lot of things that, are getting created. And it's like, man, you spent a long time on that, and ultimately, unfortunately, I hate to tell you, you just exposed a lot of information that you didn't intend to do. Or like, there's a lot of kind of security risk, from a data privacy, data information standpoint that, people just don't often understand. And I don't think that AI, is taking all of these factors into consideration. It wants to give you what you want as quickly as possible, and it cuts a lot of corners. At the end of the day, it is a double-edged sword here.
I've seen some people say the AI bubble is about to burst or the pendulum is about to swing the other way. What do you think? Are we close to that bubble popping or things swinging back the other way, or do we still have a ways to go?
We've seen this happen before. There is a lot of hype. There's a lot of marketing, a lot of fluff out there. And it kind of reminds me, back when AWS and Google Cloud and all these, it was like the cloud, right? And it was like this like big hype and big, all this, everything needed to go to the cloud and like everyone was on the cloud. We're seeing a lot of that same kind of, lot of hype, a lot of excitement, there's a lot of FOMO, but at the end of the day, a lot of people, really don't understand what the AI is and how it works. We see all the time, people will show up to a JobTread demo and they're just like, all right, I'm really looking for an AI solution. It's like, all right, great. What exactly are you hoping it'll do? It's like, well, I don't know. I just want AI. And it's like, okay, like, is there something in particular you want? Well, no, I just know I want it. And I hear everyone else is using it, so I want to use it. We have to, again, know what are we trying to do, because it's not going to just come and solve every problem under the sun. We have already seen tons and tons of AI companies. They've already come and they've already gone. We actually, on our floor here, we had an AI legal company that was right next door. They built the whole thing out, like completely, furnished it and everything. And then, before we know it, like they've already gone out of business. And it's like, apparently if you get into legal trouble, you should still hire a real lawyer. Maybe that won't always be the case, but like, again, I've seen tons and tons of these companies, who have already come and have this like this promise of AI is going to solve this particular problem or completely revolutionize this industry. And to some extent, I think it will make a big impact on a lot of industries, if not every industry. But at the end of the day, like, there is a lot of kind of, hype and buzz, and, people are getting huge valuations, raising just boatloads of money, and pouring it into this thing. And at the end of the day, I mean, like, they often don't have a lot to show for it, and ended up not being a good idea and not a good use of investors' money and capital. And so I do think we're starting to kind of see that swing back, where we're not going to just, endlessly throw a bunch of money at all these AI ideas. And I think people are looking, for the real, tangible solutions that it's solving, not just this little chatbot thing that can reply to you and yada, yada. Like, what are the real solutions that it is delivering for your business, and be very, very intentional. Like, we don't need, again, Claude and Chat, like, they're awesome, right? Like, they're great. They're these kind of all encompassing, tools. But at the end of the day, like, we're going to need very specific AI solutions, and I see it kind of getting a lot more pointed. The other problem here is again, like the funding and the cost to actually operate these AIs. Last I heard, it was like for every single dollar that you spend with Anthropic on Claude, they have to spend $18. The economics here just don't make sense. So I tell everyone, hey, while it's this, free for all, just go and use it. And, other people are basically paying for you to use it, but like, that's not sustainable. And when Anthropic goes public, when OpenAPI goes public, like the public is going to demand better economics here. And they're going to expect the consumer and the user to pay for it, or the cost to come down. And that's why we see a ton of these data centers being built out. And, again, like, I think we're going to kind of see both of these. And I think the cost will eventually, after it goes up some more, is going to hopefully come down and commoditize. And probably, eventually, this stuff will be built in directly to our devices, so that on our iPhone and on our Macs, like, we can run our own, AI engines and use our own compute power, instead of having to have everybody using everyone else's data centers and compute power, because there's not enough. And the demand is just, through the roof. And so, we kind of have this economic issue that's going to have to sort of resolve itself before, things get a little bit better.
So let's talk about one of the crowdsourced questions from the Facebook group. Here's one of the questions. How do you see the residential construction industry changing over the next 3 to 5 years? And how should construction business owners prepare for it? What do you think?
I think at the end of the day, we are going to continue to see the consumer, the homeowners, the end customer. They're going to become more and more educated and informed about construction, about, what they want. They're doing a lot more, of their own research ahead of time. We're starting to hear, homeowners are coming to the table with their own AI drawings and designs and plans. And, again, and maybe, not feasible at all, or realistic, or even within their budget. But like, I think that they're going to continue to be more and more informed when they come into these conversations. They're going to have done their due diligence, done their research, and I think they're also going to expect more out of their contractors. They're starting to realize that, again, they have a choice in who they choose. They have a choice in the type of project they take on, how much they want to spend, what they're comfortable with. They are going to be expecting more from their contractors. They're going to expect transparency. They're going to expect trust. They expect good communication, quick turnaround, and so ultimately, what I would say for the contractors and the business owners out there, like, it's important that you continue to build a well-oiled machine, and that you and your company can operate at a very high level of efficiency, that you can be responsive to your clients, that you can answer the phone, that you can deliver great customer experience. And I would also encourage you to position yourself as the educator, as the thought leader. Be the one who is publishing the content that is helping to educate people. Because all these AIs, Google, all the search, like, it is ultimately consuming all of this content, and Google knows, and the AI knows who the experts are out there, and they're going to start following on, consuming your content, and then regurgitating it right back to the consumer who's searching and looking for those answers. And so when you are the one that is training and feeding this content and this knowledge, then when those people find you, when your customer finds you, they're already going to say, wow, yeah, that's what I was thinking, and that's what I was expecting, and this person's on the same page with me. Like, I think that's how you're going to develop that instant rapport, and you're going to have a warm lead who has a lot better understanding, and you can just have a much more sophisticated and detailed conversation sooner in the process than, having a totally cold lead who has no idea what they want or what to expect or what, the budget should be. Like, I think that this is going to really help sort of inform that end consumer. And when you're right there ready to meet their needs and to help them get those projects done, it's going to help you to win those projects a lot quicker and be on the same page.
What I've seen in the work I've done with some of the more progressive builders that are clients, they're focused on customer experience. But underneath that, they're building trust. They're putting systems in place to build trust, because trust is not going up. The more AI that's out there, the more content that's out there, it's like, can I trust this or not? So there's a trust deficiency. The work I've done with our clients is, let's have a well-designed customer experience that goes during the build, back through pre-construction and design. Even think about, how do we want people to experience us during the marketing and the sales process, and design that from end to end to build trust. Because buying a home or a remodeling project or a pool or a deck, there's so many horror stories out there. And the more you can build trust into your process so that people know you, like you, and trust you before they even talk to you. Like you're saying, publish content. Ideally, you would warm these prospects up, and by the time you talk to them, they would have watched YouTube videos and Instagram reels and heard from your clients, and they know you, they like you, they trust you. And a lot of that, the sales process is happening, as you said, earlier and earlier. So much more of it is happening before they even contact the contractor. All right, here's another crowdsourced question. It's about the JobTread team culture. And this is personally, what I'll say is, every time I interact with the JobTread team, whether it's on webinars, at JobTread Connect, the work I've done as a JobTread partner, I am really impressed by the company culture. And I have worked with several software companies, and it's not always this way. Okay. So I'm curious, what are one or two tactical, maybe non-negotiable things you guys do at JobTread to reinforce this culture with your team? Because when I say culture, it is a customer-centric culture. There are some companies that are all about sales. There are some companies that are all about the technology. There's some companies where it's all about the CEO and their story and their brand. But my sense is that the JobTread culture it's all about the customer. So what are one or two tactical specific things you guys do to instill that culture with the team?
I'd say it all comes down to building the best team that you possibly can. And, you have to hire the A+ players, and you just cannot settle. You can never settle for anything less than the best people that you can possibly find and get onto your team. And so what does it look like? It's about finding people who are self-motivated. They're passionate people. They're committed to showing up every day and doing their best work because they want to do great work, because they care about others, because they want to help make an impact. At the end of the day, paying someone a salary or whatever compensation plan you give them, that's just table stakes. It's about, how do you truly unlock someone's potential and make sure that they are in the right seat, in the right role, doing what is, just the best position for them, given their skill sets, their passion, what they're excited about, and so we do a really good job taking our time to make sure that we are finding the right people and that we're bringing them on. And then, again, it's about creating this alignment. Your whole team needs to be, on the same page, and they need to wholeheartedly believe in your mission, your vision, your core values. And so, this process that we go through, and again, it's, some people have called it the gauntlet, and, it's very, very difficult to even get a second or third round interview with us. And we go through, hundreds and hundreds of applications, but it's about making sure that they are the right person. They need to understand our industry. Like we try to only hire out of construction. If you're going to be customer facing, whether you're sales, customer service, support, training, we believe that we can't teach you what it is like to be in construction. You either innately get it, you've been there, you understand the chaos, you understand the stresses, the frustrations, the anxiety, because this is a real thing that happens to just about every construction company out there. And so like we can teach them the tools, the technology, the processes, but like we want people who just, they can empathize and immediately relate to the customer. And when everyone has that mindset, we all have that kind of that common, shared ground that we get it. When a customer brings up an issue, it's not us trying to figure out why is that such an issue. Like we already understand how that's such an issue. And then we can have very meaningful conversations with others on the team as well as with our clients about, well, what are some potential solutions to this issue? Just having everybody, in the same boat, rowing the same direction, it makes it that much more enjoyable. You're going to be able to accomplish your goals a lot faster. And I think that, again, hiring the right people is so important, but it's also about focusing on building your culture. At the end of the day, even if you can get the right people on the team, like you have to keep them. And so for us, we are very big on transparency. We have dashboards all over the office, like just everything is public and available for everyone on the team to see. We've tried to kind of gamify things, like you see the results from every single department. And we have these all hands on deck. We bring in a catered lunch every Monday and Wednesday. On Wednesdays, though, all of us get together. We've got a 2-hour block from 12 to 2. We sit down as an entire team. We break bread and we go through each department and we talk about our wins, our challenges, what's coming up, like what features are we working on? How should we be talking about things? Like, are we on the same page? Are we communicating and working from the same playbook? And I think that just takes time to make sure that you're spending time with your team as a whole. And I think a lot of companies don't do that. They don't take enough time out of the busy schedule to dedicate that time to build the team and to build the culture and to just like keep people on the same page. Because as you grow and as you get more and more people, as you take on more and more jobs, as the business is doing well, it's easy to stop taking that time for yourself and for your team. But like, I would argue it is even more important in those times that you work together as a team, because again, we're not a bunch of individuals, even though I would say the whole team is full of rock stars. We work together as one team and one unit. And so it's just like finding ways to build that camaraderie, build that culture is so important. And honestly, I mean, that's why I won Entrepreneur of the Year, is because of our team and the team that we have built here. All credit goes to them for their execution and, for us just continuing to build a great product and community.
It is an impressive culture. It is working. I've been around a lot of companies of all sizes. I've worked inside Fortune 50 companies, and what you guys have done is very impressive. Very impressive. So you mentioned features. Let's talk about that. How does the JobTread team decide which features to create next?
At the end of the day, like what our customers would tell you and what I would also tell you is like we are very in tune with our customers' needs, with how they're using JobTread. We spend a lot of time, face to face with them. We have, every 1 to 2 times per month, we have, up to 100 customers coming in. We do these boot camps where we're going through these trainings. Like we get to sit there and watch them use it, watch them learn it. We have tons of focus groups and kind of collaborations with our users as well, where, advanced people can come in, they can share their feedback, give us ideas. We really build very strong relationships with our customers. Like I tell people, I view our customers as our partners, and we are building this together. And so it can be a lot of information though. And, ultimately in the very beginning, I was like literally manually trying to track every single feature request and idea. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, well, this isn't sustainable. And so we created our feature request board. And so it's directly in the help desk. It allows all of our users to go in there. Hopefully they search and kind of find, an existing thing that they're thinking about, because it very well likely has already been, listed, and they can go and upvote those ideas. The things that they want to see that they believe will make the most meaningful impact for them, they get to go upvote them. And if it doesn't exist, they can submit their own. We have a process where we'll go review it and say, hey, like that's similar to this, and we'll merge them in and kind of let it keep going that way. But like at the end of the day, like we want to make sure that we are implementing the features that are going to make the biggest impact for the most number of our users. And I think, again, as a small aside, like our pricing model bodes very well for this, because basically it's $199 a month plus $20 per user, and you get access to everything. We don't have tiered, buckets where, you got to pay more to get more features and kind of keep going up. And we keep trying to charge you more per year based on what features you want to use. Or if we roll things out, we're going to now charge them as add-ons. Like, for us, it's about making sure that we don't have to, prioritize our R&D and our development based on what's going to make us the most money, because we don't have those feature buckets. A lot of companies are like, well, we're going to go build this thing, even though only 10% of our customers are going to use it. It'll make us the most money. For us, it's about making sure that we do what is going to improve JobTread as a whole for as many people as we possibly can. And so I think, our users really appreciate that. And again, I'm super active in our Facebook group. It has been a great source of information, insight. I think we've got a really great community and collaboration going where we get to learn and work directly with our customers.
Community is very strong. Some might look at it like a cult, and the cult-like following. And, frankly, if I saw a post on the JobTread Facebook page that you said, hey, I'm going to build a spaceship, let's all meet at this one place and let's get on the spaceship, I bet hundreds of people would probably show up, because they're just that into it. But it's seriously, the community is incredible, not only getting information from JobTread, but there's so much idea and resource sharing that happens among the community. It really is impressive. So if you're a JobTread user and you're not on the Facebook group, you probably should be. I've advised several of our clients to get in there. It was recently announced that CoConstruct will be officially retired. This is a sunset that most of us in this industry have wondered when it was coming since 2021. And the official announcement came out recently. And if you're a CoConstruct user and you're panicking, it's not going away right now till April. You can create new projects until April of 2027. Don't quote me on that, but don't panic. Don't freak out if you haven't seen that. We have quite a few clients who are still CoConstruct users, and there are probably quite a few others out there. Why should CoConstruct users consider migrating over to JobTread sooner rather than at the last possible minute?
Bain Capital, bought Buildertrend back in December 2020, and then they ended up buying CoConstruct and rolling it all up into their, March 2021. Unfortunately, again, I think this is a very common, private equity playbook. You go, you roll up a bunch of things, consolidate them. They need to, ultimately, have a return, and so you got to cut a lot of the costs, and they're trying to salvage as much of the revenue. I hate seeing this because, again, like I know. And I know firsthand from my first company. I mean, I've literally lived through this. I know that there are a lot of CoConstruct users out there who, are essentially, very much ingrained with their processes, with the solutions that they have built. Donnie and I have become, we'll say acquaintances. I've talked to him every once in a while. I think I was actually the one that informed him of the news, and I sort of felt a little bad. Kind of, I know it's heartbreaking because I remember when I got the news about my first company. But at the end of the day, though, a lot of people from very early on have related us to what it was like working with Donnie and CoConstruct. They have always been a very product first company. They have, very much focused on their customers and the product and building a great product. And, unfortunately, and Donnie verbatim told me this. He's like, we just got outsold. Buildertrend, focused very heavily on sales. They've got, huge bullpen, hundreds of people that, they smiled and dialed, and they just, they just outsold them. And that's the cold hard truth of it. It didn't matter that CoConstruct had the better product because, there was so much more awareness on the Buildertrend side. What's been interesting is kind of seeing how the challenges of trying to sort of force these CoConstruct, users over to Buildertrend. It's never a good feeling or a good, taste that you feel like you're being forced to make a change. And then, I think they had a lot of kind of issues where the data didn't just cleanly migrate, from one system to the other. And that's why they struggled to get a lot of the customers to switch over. And it's been a never ending battle for them, with these users that are in this position of, they're being forced over, and ultimately, it's a price increase. They now have, I guess they call it their annual production volume, which, essentially means that, Buildertrend is going to charge you based on how much, you sell every year. And again, in my opinion, that's a very tough model. I mean, it's the Procore model, the large commercial GCs, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind that people would agree to that, but hey, it's to each their own. But I think that, we have had so many CoConstruct people over the years have come over here, and I would argue they have made a very big impact on our product. because they have given us that feedback along the way, and we could tell how well thought out a lot of that functionality was in CoConstruct. And so we have been able to incorporate that feedback over the last several years, where, these people would tell you, it is, the best alternative for them, because we are set up to mimic those processes that they had already spent all that time, building out in CoConstruct. And so, at the end of the day, why switch now? I mean, it's never good to be in a situation where you now have a clock. And every day that clock is ticking, you are losing time. And so it's better to make a transition on your own time instead of someone else's time. And so, what I encourage people to do is, at the end of the day, what would be optimal is if you could finish out your jobs where you start them. And so what that means is that you want to, as quickly as you can, start new jobs on your chosen platform going forward, whether it's JobTread, whether it's Buildertrend or something else. You want to take the time now where you can have that overlap. That's going to give you, the most amount of time. And again, we're now counting down, but that will let you, kind of run some jobs side by side and understand the differences, and be able to have the time to get your data over and get it set up the way that you want it, to get your team comfortable with it. It's just better to have the time, since we are now, kind of running out of time, to go ahead and start thinking about what does the future look like. Because for better or for worse, it's not going to be with CoConstruct. I mean, it is going away. That's all there is to it. And so, I would hope that, anyone who is using CoConstruct would go take the time to explore other alternative solutions. Buildertrend is not your only answer. And we think that, we have a very, comparable product that would be the best alternative to CoConstruct. And, our team would be honored for the opportunity even just to show it to you and help you understand what it would be like to use JobTread. At the end of the day, though, again, I feel for y'all. It's unfortunate. I hate to see, private equity come in here and just jack up the price and force the hand on this stuff. But, it is what it is, and hopefully they will find us to be a much better partner, a long-term partner. We're going on over 4 years now of not increasing our price. I feel like $199 is fair. It's affordable. A solo owner operator is not paying the same thing as a 50 or 100 person company. It scales with you, but our goal is to be your long-term partner. And I believe that we've created a very amazing community where we can add more value than just the software that you're getting.
One piece of advice I would add to that, if you are now a CoConstruct user who has a transition clock running, look at this as an opportunity to upgrade your process. Resist the urge just to take your current process, if you've been using CoConstruct, which hasn't been updated in quite some time, resist the urge to just take that and dump it into a new piece of software. This is an opportunity to look at the big picture, look at how do you want to run your business, where do you want your business to be in a few years, and look for the constraints, fix those constraints, and redesign your process and your business before you import it into another piece of software. Speaking of private equity, at JobTread Connect, you were pretty vocal about your lack of interest, maybe vehement opposition to ever selling JobTread. I heard people say, yeah, I was talking to Eric and he showed me all of these emails he gets from all of these people and he just never responds. You're opposed, not interested to selling JobTread. Why is that?
I'm very fortunate. I've already, built and sold a company. I'm not in this for the money. I was too young to retire at the age of 32. I think at this point in my life, what is most important to me is to give back and to help as many other people to become successful entrepreneurs, build successful businesses. Like I have seen the fruit of the labor, of the hard work, the grind. I mean, I know what it takes to build a successful business. And, I feel very fortunate. I have had, some great mentors and coaches in my life, my dad being my number one mentor for me, and I feel very compelled to pay it forward. And I want to help as many others out there. This isn't about, maximizing our profits and, driving as much sales and building as big of a community as we can, other than we want to help as many people as we possibly can. And like I shared earlier, I mean, there's so much private equity that comes in, to this market, and it's happening with construction companies. I mean, look at, Renovo, and look at all of these times where to them, it's a gamble. and they're just going to go and they're going to roll up a bunch of companies. They're going to mash them all together, kind of disregard all the culture, disregard, the differences, and say, hey, we got to get everybody on the same page and we need to maximize our revenue and profitability so we can have as big of a return to our shareholders. I don't feel like that is what is the best for the end users, for the customers, for our employees. I want to keep that freedom and that ability to let us focus on doing what we believe is right and is best for our customers, and best for our employees. I feel like we have that duty to be able to keep this notion of this greed out of here. Like we don't need to make a bunch of billionaires even more billions. We need to help the small, medium-sized businesses who are often getting price gouged by their software and by their, vendors and suppliers as more money goes into these companies, the immediate thing that happens is the price goes up and the end customer's paying for that. And I'm very adamant that software should be fair, it should be affordable, and it should work for all size businesses. There's no reason that, a solo owner operator can't have the same tools and the same chance at success as somebody who's got, a team or has got, some investors or has got, a track record. We should all have an equal chance to come in here and to build a great business. And I think there is enough demand. I think there's more demand than there is supply. And I want to see the small guys, the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses have that same fighting chance as your big dogs out there. Because ultimately, I believe the small businesses, the family-run businesses, the people who care, when you build a small and mighty team that cares, that's how you're going to deliver exceptional customer experiences. And that's how we're going to change this industry, is from the ground up, from the bottom up. It's the small businesses that are the bulk of this economy. It is entrepreneurs. I feel like they need somebody who's going to represent them and to champion them. And, again, I think this is one of the reasons I was selected for Entrepreneur of the Year, is because of how passionate I am about helping those guys. I got my auto reply. It just says, thanks for reaching out. We're busy growing and scaling our business. Don't have a need for an investment. And it's something that, I think has been really, really important to us to stay true and stay focused.
One last question for you before we wrap up here and we tell people where to go if they want to learn more. What is something you believe to be true about business that some people might think is unconventional, maybe even a little crazy?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is just radical transparency. And I got this from Marcus Sheridan. And when I first heard him speak, and then I read his book, They Ask, You Answer, he's since written another edition of it called Endless Customers. But, I'll never forget, several years ago, he directly spoke to me when he said, if you are ever doing something that is essentially, you're hiding information, or you're doing something because you don't want your competition to find out, or whatever it may be, you are actually doing yourself and your prospects and your customers a huge disservice. And that really resonated with me, because we used to have all of our product, live updates and what I call customer town halls, they were just for our users. And at the end of the day, though, he was so right. And we just had this, huge transition where we now open up everything. Anyone can come to any of our product update town halls. We publish every single thing on YouTube, and we've got now hundreds and hundreds of videos. If you come to our office, you see all of the transparency, you see everyone's numbers, you see everything, you see our wins, our losses, it is just I believe in this radical transparency, that when everyone has all of the information that they need to make an informed decision, then we are going to get the best customers who are the right fit for us. We're going to get the right team members who are the right fit for us. Be transparent. If your product or solution is not a good fit for someone, tell them. And tell them why, and give them a referral. I believe that, for contractors, I see this all the time. They think that they can't, go network with people in their local community because they can't, share information. Their competition might find out. I would actually argue the opposite. You can work with your competition. When you understand your competition and again, understand your strengths and weaknesses and their strengths and weaknesses, you set up a relationship where whenever you get a deal, maybe you're not good at the bigger jobs, you could send it over to them, and maybe they don't want the smaller jobs, or vice versa. You can establish these relationships where everybody can win. And so I think that there's this notion of like, we have to like, hide all of our dirty secrets, and we have to trick people, and we have to, be the only one out there. And like, that's not the case. Like, it's about making sure that you are the right solution for the customer and giving them as much information as you can, because nobody wins if you enter into an agreement with a customer and it's not a good fit. It's just, it's that simple. And so I encourage people, even I hear this a lot on their team, like, oh, we can't share our profit margins, our gross profit with whoever it is on our team, because then they're going to ask for more money and things like that. It's like, no, you got to get your team properly incentivized and aligned with hitting your goals. And if you can't give your team members the information that they need to know if you're hitting your goals, then you're going to struggle to hit your goals. It's about being transparent and working with all of the information that you have at your disposal to make the best possible decisions you can. And so, I'm an open book. I run that way. I operate that way. And I would encourage others to just think about how can you be more transparent to the point where it's radical transparency. You will be shocked at how that will help you attract people to join your team, attract clients to come on board, to attract customers, because they can trust you and they know that you want them to win and that everyone is aligned.
That's great advice. Such great advice. This has been great stuff. I assume if people want to find out more, the best place would be for them to go simply to jobtread.com. Is that right?
Yeah, we got a ton of information on our website, our YouTube channel, all of our socials. Anyone can feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm real big on Facebook, LinkedIn, happy to answer any questions. But our team is awesome as well. Even go into our website, click the schedule demo button up there. Like we would love the opportunity to show you how JobTread can help you. And again, make sure it's a good fit. Make sure that you're in the right position, the right time. Like we know it has to work for both of us, and we'd be happy to take the time to help you explore this opportunity.
So whether you're a CoConstruct user and you need to transition over, or maybe you're not using any sort of system, or you're not happy with your current system, I can tell you we've had quite a few clients who've transitioned from no platform, other platforms to JobTread, and have been very happy. If you have questions about it, feel free to contact me as well. The best place is simply to go to jobtread.com. So Eric, great stuff, man. Thank you for the work you're doing. Congratulations on the success. It's been a lot of fun to watch and inspiring to watch. And I appreciate your dedication to the industry, to doing something, frankly, you probably don't have to do. And we need more people like that. So thank you for the work you do. Thank you for taking the time to be on here.
My pleasure. And, Todd, I appreciate you and everything that you do as well, because, again, I know firsthand the impact that coaching can provide, that mentor, that insight that you bring to all these contractors' lives and to their business. I mean, that is exactly what people need, is to invest in those systems and get, your help getting them set up, because it really does make a world of difference. So thank you for all of your effort. I know sometimes it can be a thankless position here for all of us, but man, it makes a big impact. So I appreciate you.
Thank you for that. Hey, before you hit stop and skip on to the next episode, let me ask you something. If you're building custom homes or big renovations and you're starting jobs before scope, subs, and selections are completely dialed in, how long can you keep scaling like that before something cracks? That's exactly what we'll unpack on your free business evaluation call. In about 45 minutes, my team will help you do a few things. Grade your current handoff from office to field, put some real numbers to the hidden profit bleeds that could be in your business. There could be hidden profits in your business. Sketch out what a repeatable operating system would look like in your business, from sales to pre-construction through completion. And if it looks like we can help, we'll book a follow-up call to talk about the right implementation program for you. If it's not, you'll still leave with clarity and next steps. We will leave you better than we found you. So to book your call and be sure that you qualify for that call, go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, APPLY, or click the show notes. There's a link in the show notes, and book your business evaluation call.